Yeah, but it's, as far as religion, it's just that ritual. That's all it is. It's all any religion is. Buddhism, there's a ritual. Being Muslim, there's a ritual. Being Catholic, there's a ritual. Being Protestant, there's a ritual. Being Southern Baptist, there's a ritual. Being Mormon, there's a ritual. Being Hindi, there's a ritual. And of course I'm going to leave some out because there's so many of them. But within every one of them there's a ritual, and that is what religion is. So whether or not a religion is good or bad, I suppose depends on your ritual. I mean, ritualistic sacrifice of human beings is now seen as, that's kind of bad. And I'm not sure there's tolerance for that anywhere in the world at this point in our history. But there was a time where ritualistic sacrifice of human beings was looked on as necessary. So religion is just a ritual. Now, why are churches so different? I mean, I was talking earlier about. Am I still recording? Yes. I was talking earlier about the denomination explosion within the United States. So many denominations, and then you go into. That's why I like churches. You go into them; they're all different. Catholic churches run about the same, and but you have these different types of churches depending on the type of denomination. And what I find within them is the amount that it's felt is needed to bring you closer to God. Because when we decorate our churches, our temples, our mosques, our synagogues, the lavishness of it often really expresses what a person feels they need in order to be closer to God. I'm going to make a comparison. The other thing I've looked into, I've practiced what is known as witchcraft for, God, how long now? 2 decades, something like that. 18 years, something like that. I don't know. Long time. And Wicca is the religion. They'll say it's not religion. Yeah, it is. It's a ritual. It is a religion. But there's similarities I found that I can speak on anyway between Catholicism and Wicca. And where Protestantism, a more Puritan, bare bones idea. But the comparison is simple. In order to explain what religion is, within Wicca, it always seemed to me that it was the amassing of trinkets to give yourself that sense of power. when casting a spell, I'll explain to you some of that. When casting a spell within Wicca, there's all kinds of rules. You use this candle and use these stones, and ring the bell 3 times. And, there's different things within the ritual, and it's individual to the person that is casting the spell as to how much they feel they need in order to bring that power within them and focus it to a single purpose. That's what a spell is. It's borrowing the energy that is around you and focusing it to a single purpose. Now, my understanding is that this is God's energy anyway. When I borrow energy from a plant, and I'm looking at my bean plants right now, if I were to borrow energy from them and focus it to a single purpose, I'm borrowing the energy of God. But anyway, within witchcraft, if you want to call it that, it's how much that individual witch needs within their ritual to actually be able to perform that task. And I just find I really don't need anything. I don't need to light a candle. I just simply borrow the power and focus it to a single task. Now, there's rules to it. There's warnings to it. That if you're going to do something negative, that negative is going to come back to you 3 times. And so there's a very conscious effort, for me anyway, to ensure that what I'm doing is simply a benign something. It usually amounts to me being able to acquire things I want with little or no money. That's what I use my witchcraft for. But yeah, that's all it is. But for many witches, or within even Wicca, and people getting into Wicca, it's that accumulation of trinkets. And so there's a big business from it as a result. And then you have Catholicism, which is kind of the same. It's kind of the Wicca of Christian religions. There's a lot that's needed within Catholicism. You have the saints, and you have the cathedrals that are just beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful, stained glass, and medieval and Gothic, and wow! And it seems there's a lot of stuff that's needed to make them feel closer to God. Versus the Puritan, or whatever you want to call him, the Quaker, who walks into a church that has nothing. It may have a wooden cross. But that Quaker feels just as close to God as that Catholic. Now, there's no right or wrong in that necessarily, unless wrong was done in order to gain that wealth to build that cathedral to honor God. Then that wealth is tainted in the eyes of God. But in and of itself, to seek out, one church over another, because here you feel closer to God, or here you feel closer to God, there is no wrong choice in doing that. And I was invited to a group online. It was it was a Mormon kid, and I call everybody kid who's in their 20s, inviting me, I would like to invite you to this, group. And it was a religious group, but it was about openly speaking about really theology. And I hadn't responded to it yet, and then there were two other responses, and these were people that were leaders of churches, and going off, saying these horrible things about this Mormon kid, and Mormonism, and you're going to hell, and they were both saying it. And so I responded. I was saying, I was going to politely decline this very nice invitation. But after watching you two, I may just join up. So I can view with a little tolerance. And so we started getting into it. These other religious leaders. Because they were both from different ones. They were both Christian religions, but Christian in their base ideology, I suppose. But they were different. I can't remember which two they were. It doesn't matter. But each were stating that theirs was the one that was right, and they were going to heaven alone. And so since I had two of them there proclaiming the same thing, but came from different, very different ideologies, very different denominations, I said, all right, which one of you are going to hell? You're both claiming that only you are correct. So right now, I want you to tell me which one of you, in your estimation, is going to hell. Because until this point, they were defending each other in fighting with me. And so I asked those two, which one of you, according to you, and your words, are going to hell? And of course they couldn't answer, and of course they stumbled, and of course all their arguments started to unravel. I like the Mormons. I think they're fun. They always seem very nice. They're always clean. They're always polite. What's wrong with that? I had some Mormon kids come to my door. Maybe it was a couple of years ago. And I talk to them. I like talking to them. But we have a college across the street. I have a college across the street. And so, they go to college. And it's part of kind of their service, their penance, to do this, it's really testimony. Testify. And you go door to door and testify, basically. And it's just kind of it's harmless. It's absolutely harmless. And they're so nice, and they're so polite. And so I talk to them. And these two kids come, and that's how I got a copy of the Book of Mormon. Now, I've never read it. I probably should. But I know enough about it that I just don't want to. But I was asking them questions, and I just ask questions. I would rather hear it from you than read it in the damn book. I want to understand, I want to know what your understanding of it is. I want to know your understanding of it. I don't want to read your book. I want to know your understanding of it. So I know that you have a clear understanding of the passage that you're talking about. And not simply throwing a dart at me by quoting a verse out of context. See, but that's true for all of them. And you really don't run into that dart throwing. I haven't with other religions. I just don't. I don't get it. When I talk to people about Islam, they're not throwing verses from the Quran at me. They're talking about the passage. They're talking about the meaning. They're talking about, hopefully the lesson. If you talk to a rabbi, he's not throwing Bible verses at you, not quoting name and number. Because that's just throwing darts. What he's doing is he's giving you the lesson within a passage. Yeah, if you sit and listen, I like rabbis. And of course, rabbi means teacher. And that's the job of a teacher, is to let you know what the lesson is within whatever story you just read. This is a lesson. And so there's nothing wrong with the Bible. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from within it. And just because it was in the Bible doesn't mean that the lesson is it was good. Or even something that was, well, it still might apply. I mean, there's so much stuff talked about agriculturally within the Bible that if right now within our set of sciences within agriculture, we've moved past those basic, hey, don't eat the pork in the hot sun, or you're probably going to die, kind of lessons. And, it was stuff, you had to put it down and tell people, hey, don't be doing this stuff because you're probably going to die. But these were for health reasons. I mean, for God's sake, understand that. And the stuff about the planting and the sowing. You know why they were talking about that? Is because of agricultural diseases of the plants, and don't plant your plant here, and talking about early understanding of nutrients within soils, so that there was some guideline. These are biblical freaking guidelines, old Bible guidelines for agriculture. So the Bible is full of lessons. If we were ever to, go back to a time where we actually destroyed ourselves, then, and all our sciences are doing us no good, and we don't have the access to the fertilizers that we have now, or the pesticides, or the genetically altered seeds that we've come up with in order to plant and feed ourselves. If we were denied all that at some point in the future, then those agricultural ideas that you might find in the Old Testament, if that was the only book that were to survive, may do you some good. Don't eat the pork while living in the hot sun. And don't plant this plant too many times in the same soil. But when it's used as a weapon, then of course it's wrong. I started this out by saying that you're all right and you're all wrong. And it's very true. You're all right and you're all wrong. As a religion, there's people that understand exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sure that I am not the only person that is having the same thought at the same moment. But you have to ask yourself, because within, the Bible is the one I'm most familiar with. Now, I only have cursory knowledge of the other books, because I bothered to ask somebody about them. I have not been the avid reader to go read them all. Because I'm not searching for an answer, I suppose. There isn't a burning question within me, and a necessity to go read these. So I talk, the Bible is the one that I know the best. What we call the Bible, the King James Version of the Bible, the one that is typically known as the Bible, Old and New Testament, King James Version. That's the one that I know best. And there are a lot of lessons to be learned within that book. There's nothing wrong within that book. How you use it could be wrong, of course. But there is nothing wrong within that book. It's simply full of lessons. If you believe that God came to earth in human form to teach man for a period, and believe the words, the limited words that were written down that he said, what were they? How was he teaching? How does God teach? How does God teach? God has always taught through parable. Always. It is through parable that God teaches. Now why does God teach through parable? Because the lesson applies to all. The lesson applies to all. The story of Noah. I know there are some that say, Genesis is the literal truth. But Genesis, in fact, is a mythology, similar to the Greek or any other creation idea. Even at the time of Moses, they understood that they were, far removed from that ancient time. But within those stories, what are those? Parables. Parables. The story of Noah. What is the story of Noah about? Preparation. That's all it is. Preparation. Be prepared. You're only as prepared for that emergency, that catastrophe, that cataclysm as you are right now this very moment. That's the lesson of Noah. Now within the story of Noah, if you pick it apart and start going verse by verse by verse by verse, oh my God. Sure, you can read a lot of things into it, I suppose. There's a lesson about drinking. Noah got drunk. But it was really a story about preparation. That is the lesson to be gleaned. And if you talk to a rabbi about these stories, he would tell you the lessons. This is the lesson within the story. This is what you should glean from that. Don't worry about whether or not it was literal. The prodigal son wasn't a real person. Don't worry whether or not it was literal. Understand the lesson that was there. Now, there's other lessons to be learned as well. Lessons of what not to do. Lessons of what not to do. But if you listen to some, and it depends on your idea of God. We, as human beings, we anthropomorphize many things. We do it to our pets. I do it to my cat. He is my little boy. He's my baby. And he's my little man. And he has, human traits. And, he does. But his wants are very simple. But we tend to do it. And we anthropomorphize lots of things. And it could be an animate object, an inanimate object. But we do it often to God. We anthropomorphize God. And so what we have a tendency to do as human beings is to place our desire upon him. And so if you're an evil person trying to use or wanting to use religion in an evil way, you anthropomorphize God and place your desire upon him. Because in doing that, you've absolved yourself. You can blame God for your desire. And that's oppression. That's what people are doing that want to oppress others in the name of God. That want to oppress others in the name of God. And it's true for Islam, it's true for Christianity, and I'm sure it's true within some other religions, where the desire to oppress or subjugate a fellow human being is blamed upon God, when it was simply your desire to oppress or subjugate. But he gives you perfect absolution. Or does he? And it's those people that will throw the darts of the Bible verse at you. They will throw the dart, hoping it sticks. Hoping you don't know more or as much as they do about what the hell they're talking about. But God is not anthropomorphized. He is not us. He does not have our perspective. Imagine God. This is God. Creator of all things. The one from whose energy the beginning began. And he alone will witness the end of each and everything. He will bear witness to the beginning and the end of each individual thing within his creation. That is God's perspective. Now, why would he put himself there as that, to do that? Curiosity. Why do we create anything? Curiosity. God gave to us an evolving earth and curiosity. And curiosity is not a bad thing. It's in the application of our discoveries that we make our mistakes. It's not in being curious. See, but God isn't out there recreating or destroying or actively. This is his creation. He's witnessing it. He's observing everything that's going on. Isn't there something within your religion that God is actually watching you? In each and every one of them. That's kind of a common thread throughout all of them. God is watching you. And isn't that used so often within religion by leaders to keep people in line? God is watching you. And we preach of a God that should be feared and a God that should be loved. And there are different things that go on, but what freaks people out is there's this common thread throughout all religions that God is watching. But if you were to create something that was moving, that was evolving, as its creator, would you not watch? Is not observation the purpose of creation? And so to us, as a gift to us, he gave curiosity. Unfortunately, he also gave us the ability to carry out experimentation in the name of our curiosity, which has led to a lot of good and has led to a lot of bad. And this we call free will. But it's part of his, he's not going to interfere too much because, you know what? I'm observing. God has a different perspective from us, but yet we anthropomorphize God. That is why the king could claim that I was appointed by God. Because we anthropomorphize God. And the dictator can claim he is God. Because we anthropomorphize God. But all these people are doing, the ones who subjugate, the ones who oppress, the ones who want to enslave people through religion, are simply anthropomorphizing God and placing their own desire upon him in an effort to give them self-absolution from a God who has a completely different perspective. Every country going to war says God is on their side. Which one's right? Which one's wrong? It depends what side you're on. Does it sound like God is going to get, God didn't create borders. He didn't even create a concept of a border. He gave us curiosity so that we would seek and explore. It was a gift he gave to us because it was a gift. It was something he had. It was something he understood. This joy of curiosity and observation. Because that's God's perspective. Curiosity and observation. Do you think he's just watching you? Do you think he's just watching you? Do you think he's just watching your country? Or watching over your country? Do you think he's just over your town or in your church? Do you think he's encapsulated so small, like a genie in a lamp? God has a very different perspective. And if God is angry at man, it is over this one simple thing. You're actively destroying his creation. If you actively destroy his creation, it's not a natural thing, and you've created this anomaly within the experiment. Within the prophecies of, going forward and blah, 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 within the prophecies of the end, it was if you look at the Bible as a whole, you can see some of the prophecies being said. And if you were to look at it as a whole, which it should be done as well, not taken apart piece by piece and thrown as darts. If you look at the prophecy within the story of Noah, it says within it that I will never destroy the earth again with water. Well, I'm not going to do it again with water. And so, the assumption is, well, it's going to be something else. If it's not going to be water, it'll be some other way. And, of course, now that we have nuclear weapons, and of course fire is thought of. Well, not going to destroy with water, maybe you're going to destroy with fire. But it's not that God is doing it, it's that we are doing it to ourselves. Whatever our end is now is predicted by ourselves. And that's what the prophecies within Revelations were saying. If you want to take it as prophecy, if you want to believe it as prophecy of a future, it is not that God is oh, man is so sinful, I'm going to... He doesn't need to. What he's saying is stop what you're doing because you're going to destroy my creation. And if that happens, it says also a new earth will be born. But don't go down that road. It's not, God has a different perspective than we do. And so those prophecies within Revelation, that was a warning sign. Stop, yield, slow down, caution. Because we are doing this to ourselves. We're doing this to ourselves. And within the book of Genesis, what did God ask of Adam? Within that parable that applies to every person. A parable applies to every person. And within that parable of God speaking to Adam, what did God ask of Adam? To name every animal. And be custodian of my creation. Custodian of my creation. Man, you have a lot of curiosity. You're doing things. You have the potential to do things that could be good or bad. And so be custodian of my creation. God has a very different perspective from ours. But yet we anthropomorphize God so he fits our perspective. And so every religion is both right and wrong.